The CITT project, it stands for Carbon Infrastructure Transformation Tool project, and it's about developing a carbon calculator that will calculate the embodied carbon emissions for large infrastructure projects. The problem within the infrastructure sector that the project hopes to contribute to solving is firstly aiding the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from the sector, which are very large, and it also hopes to address the fragmented nature of the supply chains or value chains within the infrastructure sector. So infrastructure projects tend to be very large with a large number of participants, and the tool is intended to be open access and a platform that all of those participants can use and share. At the moment, with large infrastructure projects, there'll be a large number of participants, from the client to the design team to the contractor through to suppliers. And there's recognition that collaboration is needed to share greenhouse gas or carbon information across the process through which the infrastructure project is delivered. And without that, it's very difficult to make comparisons between different participants' estimate of what the emissions are. And to give an example of that, if a client has already produced an estimate of what the carbon emissions will be from the project using a particular piece of software, when they compare that to the estimate of emissions from the contractor, if those two participants are using different tools and different methodologies, they'll come up with different numbers. And it's not clear that those different numbers represent real differences in emissions or whether they're just created because of the difference in the methodologies used.
The way how this tool works, it aggregates different data sets with carbon factors. They together give results in terms of cost, time, and carbon, indicating the hotspots of the whole project. From these hotspots within the project, they can work a way and a solution to reduce this high impact due to cost carbon during the time.
The status of the project at the moment is that we are 1 year in to what is a 3-year project. The tool, or the first iterations of the tool, have been developed, and what we'll do is continue to develop that tool as we test it. So every time we test the tool, we'll feed back the learning from that experience into the development of the tool. We've also undertaken a number of interviews with other industry participants to triangulate the findings that we're getting from the workshops. We've also collected data from a number of trials of the tool on real infrastructure projects to understand the way in which the tool is quantifying emissions and the possibility of burden shifting effects, where the tool, because it's only looking at embodied carbon emissions, might suggest that a particular action reduces emissions, but that action might create increases in emissions elsewhere in the life cycle of the infrastructure project.
We have several customers very, very enthusiastic and interested in this tool. We have trialing this tool for 5 customers, so for 5 case studies, and we are aiming to have other 5 in 2018.
The workshops have been hugely useful. The first workshop that we ran in April 2017 brought together around 16 different external industry partners and organisations. And in some cases, those organisations have their own proprietary software and carbon calculator tools. One thing that was very interesting in terms of feedback was the openness and the interest amongst the industry participants in the possibility of a standardized platform, an open access tool that would be available to everyone. And I think the interest there is recognition that there's need for consistency and communication on this issue. If you have a tool that's proprietary, then it's very difficult for you to pass on that carbon information to suppliers or to clients if they're using alternative tools. If you have designed and if you have paid for your own proprietary tool, then there'll be some resistance in not using that tool and using an alternative. So that's one of the barriers that we've shown through the workshops. Another one of the barriers that has come across is the absence of granular data. So ideally, when running the tool, it should be possible to ask suppliers for granular data on the composition of the building materials that they supply or the building components. And that's sometimes very difficult. So often suppliers will only have very aggregate data on large components, and it's not possible, or at the moment there's difficulty in them breaking down that data into the granular level that's needed for quantifying emissions. So that's another one of the key barriers that's come through the workshops. The needs of infrastructure companies, particularly those interested in testing the tool, primarily are to understand what the greenhouse gas emissions are from their projects, and particularly which are the biggest emission sources. So that's the principal need from using the tool. The other need is to have a tool that is compatible and translates information across different supply chain actors.
The first year of the project has been very intense, but also very exciting, because we didn't expect a great success with our customers. We were aware, and we are aware, of the barriers and also the competition that there is around in the market. But we are very passionate about what we are doing. And what we like is that our clients and also other people in our industry, they see this, so they see that we are not doing this for our interest, but really for the environmental interest. So this is giving us a lot of energy and enthusiasm.